I'm glad to be back. I missed you Sunday. I did go to church last Sunday. My perfect attendance pin is still intact. Although it was 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time when I was in church at St. George's Cathedral in Jerusalem. I was away for 8 days with a group of 10 pastors and 10 rabbis from 10 cities around the country. It was great. We toured the Holy Land together. We talked about the Palestine-Israeli conflict together. We learned, we stretched each other. It was wonderful. And I am inspired but not rested. I have no idea what time it is right now. But touching the Jordan River and walking the sights along the Sea of Galilee inspired me to come back and preach the stories of Jesus with more color and clarity and focus and place. And I got back Wednesday excited I got into the office, put on a sport coat, flew in Wednesday morning. 2 o'clock, I was so dead I had to go home. So I didn't get started on today's sermon until Thursday morning, but I was still excited to make the Holy Land come alive for you all. Sharpened pencil, I'm ready to go. And looked at the text, and I'm preaching a letter from a first century elder. There's no Galilee or Palestine anywhere in this thing, and it's just going to have to wait. But I promise I'll come back to it. As I said, today's letter is written by a first century elder of the church, but I'm not sure that's the case. There's some reasonable debate about who wrote 1 John. Popular opinion is that the beloved disciple wrote the Gospel of John and 1 John, all the letters of John. But we do know that a faith community gathered around that apostle, and that this could be a product of somebody within that community of John who heard the stories and the lessons from that apostle. As we've said in here before, Galilean fishermen are usually not that great of writers, so it might have been somebody from the community. But in any case, what we have is a holy treasure. And whoever did write this did not want us to go away unclear. You probably noticed there is no nuance in today's text. There's no head scratching about what does the disciple want us to get, or the author want us to get from this. This is about as flat-footed as it gets. It is written as though we are dense and dull and just need it said over and over and over and pounded in. Sounds a little like my mother when I was young. Now I'm going to say this slowly and over until you get it, because it's important. So I'm going to read just 4 verses again in case you missed it the first time, and I want you all to lean in and listen and see if you might can get the nuance of what the author's trying to get through to us. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us, sent his Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. No one has seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is perfected in us. Do you think you got it yet? Do I need to read it again? You think the theme is coming through? In the longer reading of 14 verses, the author uses some form of the word love 19 times. So why so direct and in our face? Bill Self, who for several years was pastor just up the road at Wyuka Road Baptist Church, writes about this text. And his guess is, he says he thinks this is a mature Christian writing to younger Christians in the community who are fussing with each other about theological concerns. Could be. Dr. Self says, some Christians love doctrinal controversy because it provides an occasion for spirited, contentious defense of the faith. It's also a way of amassing power within the church. He might be right. I've seen it. I've seen churches split wide open over doctrinal issues. Years ago, one of those issues that was kind of a third rail issue among Baptists was what's called open or closed communion. Those who practice closed communion contend that only baptized members of that particular church can participate in the Lord's Supper. So if we were having the Lord's Supper here and you had your parents in from Savannah, First Baptist Church, they couldn't participate in the Lord's Supper with us. You think I'm kidding? Google closed communion. And you'll see postings on why people today still insist that that's the only biblical way to do it. And there was a day that some churches split right in half over that issue. You can do that in a doctrinal dispute. You can be right and still cause more hurt and diminish the cause of love. Premillennialism, that's a doozy. Boy, the Baptists had a time with that one. Premillennialism is the belief that Jesus will physically return to the earth before a literal 1,000-year reign of peace. And a lot of pastors got fired because they were on the wrong side of that one. And some churches split right in half. Family members wouldn't speak to each other ever again because they were not on the right side of premillennialism. And no hurting person got loved back into wholeness because some people place a higher value on being right than being loving. Well, I want to affirm this church on that matter. I don't think I have ever been part of a church that was more committed to keeping the main thing the main thing. You all, in the almost 5 years I have been here, have just demonstrated you've got no time for sideline disputes. And this just makes my job so much more joyful. Thank you. But it's not enough to dismiss the agendas that might get us off purpose when our text is calling for something bigger, something more out of us. The text is calling us to an active love, a vigorous, get the heartbeat up, sacrificial, cost you something love, because there's so much pain in the world. And on that score, we can do better. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is perfected in us. Well, most of you know that the New Testament has 5 different words for love where we only have one. And I wish I had 5 different words to use for love. I use the same word to say, I love Melissa, I love fried okra, and I love listening to Keb Mo with the headphones on. That's really 3 different things, don't you think? But the Greeks had 5, and I wish I had 5. Most of you know this already, so I'll do it quickly. Eros is romantic love, not just erotic, but all romantic love. Eros, I love Melissa. Storge is love for a dependent, motherly love. I love my children. I love Haley and Brendan. Philos, friendship love, brotherly love. Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. I love Steve. Love Ryan and Ann. Philos. Mania is just what it sounds like. Obsession. It almost doesn't even qualify as a love. It's lust, it's obsession. It's just like it sounds, mania. I love dark roast Sumatra coffee from Starbucks. But the word love, that's used 19 times in these 17 verses, is agape. Agape love is entirely about the virtue of the one doing the loving. It has nothing to do with the merits of the person being loved. Agape requires no payment or favor. Agape doesn't trade, it doesn't keep score. It is the most common word for God's love for us. For God so agape'd the world. Richer and poorer, sickness and in health, that is agape. Agape love has nothing to do with the merits of the person being loved, only with the character of the person doing the loving. And it's not easy. It's not close to being easy. And yet it's at the core of our Christian calling. We love even when other people are unlovely. We love when we don't feel like it. We love when people don't deserve it. We love when it's hard. And there's nothing about that should remind you of a Hallmark card or Godiva chocolates. Agape love has calluses and heartbreaks and skinned knees. It's hard. I've seen it in so many beautiful ways, and it takes on so many different forms. I was at a meeting this week at Buckhead Christian Ministry, and Kiva Case, the CEO there, who you know, he's been a guest in our church, he said that 3 or 4 women from a neighboring church, one of our other Buckhead churches, came to his office earlier last week. They had an appointment. They sat down. They said, Kiva, we just can't get past the idea that we keep adding to our net worth while people in our city don't have enough to eat. We've got enough money. We've got more than enough money. What can we do to make the biggest difference in the pain in our city? That's agape love. When I make a visit to the hospital, almost every time when I leave, somebody comes right behind me from this church. They have driven to Piedmont, paid to park, taken the elevator up just so they could put a face on the prayers of this congregation to somebody in a hospital bed. One morning last week, Friday morning, because I still wasn't awake. Yeah, I was awake real early Thursday morning. It was Thursday morning. I was awake really early Thursday morning, still jet lagged. Went to the gym, putting on my tie, got in a conversation with a guy who was recently retired hospital employee. He said he was getting on a plane later that morning going to Bolivia. In his retirement, he's gotten part of a board that takes hospital equipment that it's expired at a hospital in the United States, but still in good operating order. And this group takes this hospital equipment to underserved places like Bolivia, sets it up, trains people. It's agape love, nothing in return. I've got a friend in Gainesville, not far up the road, retired blue-collar worker. He's got a group of buddies who are retired blue-collar workers, and they spend most of the year jotting down notes of people they hear about who are living in really substandard housing up in the North Georgia mountains. And sometime in the fall, they work about 3-day work weeks. That group gets together, goes house to house, and weatherproofs the house for those people for the winter. Agape work. Last year, a woman in our church mailed me a $10,000 check over and above her pledge, and she said, "Do some good with this." Nothing in return, just agape work. I know a beautician in our city who once a month on her day off, she goes to a retirement home and cuts hair, fixes up women who feel abandoned, and she makes them feel valued. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. No one's ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is perfected in us. Agape love is God's unfailing, unmerited love of us. And today's call out of Scripture is that we treat each other that way. When I say each other, I don't just mean ailing family members or folks in the balcony you haven't gotten to know well yet. This is a call to love even the unlovely, a God love that expects nothing in return. Some of you did that last Saturday. We've talked about that already. Some of you gave up your Saturday, a day of service. You made 1,000 snack packs for Action Ministries to feed children this summer whose name you do not know. As we already heard, you went to Shepherd Center, took coffee and donuts and visited and brought joy to people's lives whom you may never see again. You visited homebound members of this church who are lonely, and you just wanted to extend the warmth of this room that sustains us every week. You wanted to carry that into their home. It's agape work. And one of the results of that kind of love is that your heart increases, your capacity enlarges, your heart grows, your account gets full, and love is the only account that grows when the spending increases. So let's continue in our commitment to refrain from any sideline disputes that attract from the main church mission of taking God's love to this city and the world. But let's commit to more love. Let's agape more as a church. There is so much human hurt out there. We've got so much to do. There's financial insufficiency and loneliness and addiction and spiritual lostness and broken relationships. As hard as it is to believe, there will be children in this city who cry themselves to sleep tonight because they do not have enough to eat. And there will be women in the morning who get up and put makeup over the bruises and hope nobody asks why. It's time for us to get more serious about being an agent of God's love in this city and the world. If you have a passion but no place to locate it, if there's something you want to give, there's something you want to be involved in, there's something you want to do, talk to Ryan or me. We'll find something in this church or in this city, some place for you to exercise your capacity of love. But we've all got to find something, some place, because the directive from 1 John is so clear. The commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. Let's stand and sing.